Meeting has not yet started. We're allowing a couple more minutes to allow more folks and memberships to join us so we can reach a quorum. So please stand by. Tim will let us know and let the chairs know when we reach the quorum.
So according to my records, we do have quorum for CTAC now, and we're still missing two members from SANTEC for quorum. But yes, that's the update.
So Alex, if you don't mind, since we have quorum for one group, officially we can start the meeting. We may not be able to do the approval for the minutes for SANTEC, but what do you think we should get started?
Yes, let's go ahead and get started. And then Tim will let us know when we reach the quorum for SANTEC.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Tim and Alex. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the joint meeting of CTAC, SANTEC, meeting of Thursday, January 20th, 2022. We have a full agenda today, and we're running a few minutes late, but my name is Mo Samak with my co-chair, Minji May. We're going to do everything we can to finish the meeting on time and on schedule. With that, I want to move on to a couple of logistics items. I think we talked about this almost on every meeting. Please keep your microphone on mute during the meeting. Obviously, you want to turn the microphone on and your video on if you choose to do so when you speak. And when you do, please state your name, of course, your agency you belong to, and whether you represent CTAC or SANTEC. Like I said, we do everything we can to get you back on schedule. The meeting is supposed to last until 11 o'clock. Hopefully, we'll be able to manage that. With that, we move on to item number 2, which is public comments. This portion of the meeting is dedicated to members of the public to make any comments or address the committee members for any items that are not on the agenda, or other members who wish to make an announcement and or provide any information for the benefit of the group. With that in mind, Alex, do we have any members of the public who wishes to speak?
Or Chair, I don't see any raised hands from members of the public.
Perfect, thank you. Alex, do we have any announcements? Is Jeff still going to make an announcement?
That's correct, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Jeff Hoyes has an announcement from SANTEC to address the group. So Jeff, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Committee members, I'd like to take this opportunity to invite you and your permitting staff to attend an EV charger permit streamlining webinar and discussion on Tuesday, February 8th from 1 to 2 p.m. There'll be more electric vehicle charging station projects underway in San Diego County with the release of additional state, regional, and federal funding. This means more charging station permit applications coming to your jurisdiction for review. So now is a great time to get in the know about how to comply with state policies AB 1236 and the newest AB 970, both which aim to streamline EV charger station permitting. During the webinar, you'll hear from SANTEC, the Center for Sustainable Energy, the Governor's Office of Business and the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development, and on new and existing requirements. And you'll also hear from the County of San Diego on their path to compliance and getting to green on the state's GoBiz EV charger station permitting streamline map. So please join us for the webinar and discussion. And as an added bonus, you'll receive a complimentary one-on-one follow-up consultation with the Center for Sustainable Energy to discuss any specific barriers and questions specific to your permitting jurisdiction. The registration link I'll throw in the chat here in a moment. And so if you have any follow-up questions, you're welcome to reach out to me, Jeff Hoyes at SANTEC, or you can follow up with the Cali VIP EV expert additional link, which I'll throw in the chat here as well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate the update.
Chair, we also have a raised hand from Minji.
Please.
Yeah, thank you. I have a quick question for SANTEC members. If any of you are using the McCain Omni program already, have some experience with, I'd like to chat with you if you can reach out to me. Thank you. Just that's all.
Thank you, Minji. And Alex, do we have any other announcements?
We don't have any other announcements at this point, but I do want to make an announcement, a brief announcement, and I'll make it quick for the interest of time. As you know, there's been the new SB 43 that was adopted, and so there's some ongoing discussions with SANTEC staff and Subir in putting together a series of informational items and also a workshop. So there's more to come on that. And the first introductory to the bill will be during our February meeting. So just want to make that brief announcement. So there's more information that we would like to share based on some comments that was raised in past meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. I am very much interested in that. I'm sure many members are also interested. So thank you for working with Zubair on this one. And in advance, I want to express my appreciation to Zubair to spend some time on this item. So we look forward to this discussion and information item for next month. Thank you very much. With that, I want to turn it over to Minji to talk about item number 3.
Thank you, Mo. Yeah, item number 3 will be the approval of the meeting minutes of the December 18 meeting. I know we have a quorum for the CTAC meeting, so let's do that first. And the staff will call the roll, and when you approve the meeting, oh, sorry. Before we do that, of course, I'll need a motion and a second before we can proceed. Or if anybody has any comments at this moment, please go ahead.
Well, SAMAC, City of Solana Beach, I move approval of the minutes of the meeting for December 2021.
This is Tom. I'll second.
Sorry, who was the one make the second?
Frank Rivera, Chula Vista.
Frank, thank you. Yeah, we have a motion and a second. So with that, we can move forward with the roll call for the approval. When your agency is called, please tell your agency and your name and your approval or otherwise. Thank you. Tim, go ahead.
Thank you. So we're going to start with the city of Carlsbad for CTAC.
Yeah, good morning. This is Tom Frank with Carlsbad, and yes on the minutes.
Thank you. City of Chula Vista.
Yes.
Could you say your name, please?
Frank Rivera, yes.
Thank you. City of Coronado. Not seeing anyone in attendance. City of Del Mar. Not seeing anyone in attendance. City of El Cajon.
Good morning, Mario Sanchez. I approve.
Thank you. City of Encinitas. City of Escondido.
Good morning, Julie Procopio, approve.
Thank you. City of Imperial Beach.
Good morning, Angelo. Approve. Thanks. Oh, is this for CTAC?
Yes, yes.
Done.
Go ahead, Juan. I need to abstain for SANTEC.
Okay. Yeah, Juan Larios, I approve.
Thank you. City of La Mesa.
Bill Kern, City of La Mesa, aye.
Thank you. City of Lemon Grove. City of National City. City of Oceanside. David, City of Oceanside. Okay, so we might.
David Toshak. Oh, sorry, Colin and David Toshak approved.
Thank you. City of Poway.
John Collins abstain.
Thank you. City of San Marcos. City of Santee.
May City Santee approved.
Thank you. City of Vista. City of Vista, Sam.
Yeah, Sam Hassanen, approve.
Thank you. City of San Diego.
San Diego, Gary Tui, approve.
Thank you. City of Solana Beach.
Mo Samak, Solana Beach, yes.
Thank you. County of San Diego.
Bill Morgan, County of San Diego, approve.
Thank you. NCTD. And MTS. Chair, with that, I'm handing it over to you, and it looks like the meeting minutes have been approved and quorum also is confirmed.
Thank you, Tim. Now, do we have a quorum for the SANTEC members?
Yes, we do.
Okay. So let's do the same. Please take a quick moment, and if there are any questions, there'll be time to ask a question. And if not, I will entertain a motion and a second for the meeting minutes.
Zubir, move to approve.
Motion made
This
by
is Paul
Zubir.
Chula Vista. I have one comment on the attendance. I was not able to attend. Eddie Flores attended, which is noted on there.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks.
Thank you. We'll make that change.
Thank you.
So we got the motion. Did we get a second?
Yeah, we'll just need a second.
Hassanen, City Vista, second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Staff, please call the roll for approval as we did it for the CTAC meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're doing the approval for the meeting minutes for the December meeting for SANTEC, starting with Caltrans.
Brian Miller with Caltrans, abstain.
Thank you. City of Carlsbad.
Yeah, this is Tom Frank, and I'll designate myself as third alternate. And I'm the transportation director, city engineer, and I will say yes on the minutes.
Thank you. Could we get a quick email about this? Just so we have a
Sure.
Thank you. City of Chula Vista.
Paul Oberbauer, abstain.
Thank you. City of Coronado. City of Del Mar. City of El Cajon.
Mario Sanchez, I approve.
Thank you. City of Encinitas. City of Escondido.
Ed Alberto, approve.
Thank you. City of Imperial Beach.
Steve Manganello, abstain.
Thank you. City of La Mesa.
Mike Kennard, City of La Mesa, abstain.
Thank you. City of Lemon Grove. City of National City. City of Oceanside. Tila, I believe I saw you in attendance. If you're speaking, you might be on mute. You might need to come back to City of Oceanside. City of Poway.
It looks like John Collins abstain.
Thank you, John. And I only see you on the CTAC roster. So we would also need a
Yeah,
rider
that's,
form.
I thought Henry was going to be on, so that's fine. You can just say absent.
Thank you. City of San Diego. City of San Marcos. City of Santee.
Minji May, City of Santee, approve.
Thank you. City of Solana Beach.
Jim Greenstein, City of Solana Beach, I approve.
Thank you. City of Vista.
Sam Hassanen, approve.
Thank you. County of San Diego.
Zubir Wada, I approve.
Thank you. North County. And MTS. And one more time for City of Oceanside. Yes.
Tiala is approved on the chat.
Thank you. Chairs, with that, I'm handing it over to you. We have confirmed quorum as well as approved of the SANTEC meeting minutes.
Okay, thank you, Tim. So with that, the meeting minutes is done. I'll turn it over to Mo. Thank you.
Thank you, Minji, and thank you, Tim. Just to confirm, you were able to get the roll call for all attendees during this process as well, correct?
But yes.
Thank you. Thank you for doing that. I appreciate it. Great. So we're up on the item number 4, which is an item on on-call flexible fleet services and flexible fleet implementation strategic plan. Marissa, Megan, and Eva Sanchez of SANTEC are going to provide us with an overview. And I'm not sure, Marissa, you're going to do it or Megan?
We're going to tag team.
Perfect. Floor is yours.
One moment. Thanks, everyone. Eva Sanchez and I are here to talk about some of the work we are doing on flexible fleets. And I'll actually hand it over to Eva first so that she can give a brief update on the flexible fleet implementation strategic plan. And then I'll talk about our upcoming joint procurement.
Hi, good morning, everyone. As Marissa mentioned, my name is Eva Sanchez. I'm a regional planner within the Mobility and Innovation Department. And I've been taking the lead on the planning and implementation of our flexible fleets. And I'm sure you're all familiar with the term flexible fleets, but just as a reminder, flexible fleets was one of the key strategies in our 5 big moves as part of the regional plan. And we're considering flexible fleets to be shared on-demand mobility services that range from smaller micromobility devices all the way to microtransit, and then everything in between, such as car share or ride share, and even last mile delivery services. And so as part of the regional plan, we identified a mobility hub network and identified some different types of flexible fleets that would work well in the different mobility hub types. But now we're taking a deeper dive and developing an implementation strategic plan to move forward with implementation and ensure that any pilot that we deploy is aligning with our regional plan and regional transportation goals. And so we've developed a set of goals and objectives for how we want these flexible fleet services to operate. Could you go back to the last slide? Thank you. We've developed an evaluation criteria using quantitative and qualitative data to see where flexible fleets would be suitable in the region, and then also set a basis for how we measure performance. And then identify some different use cases and implementation considerations for when we do implement these pilots. And then working with different stakeholders to prioritize about 2 to 4 pilots that we can deploy within the next couple of years. Next slide. So here's just a high-level summary of some of the goals that we identified for flexible fleet pilots. We want these services to be equitable, make sure that the devices themselves are accessible, affordable. We want to ensure that they're ensuring the pilots are safe, also impacting travel behavior and helping us to achieve our climate goals. The benefit of flexible fleets is that they're flexible and adaptable. We want them to be competitive with drive-alone modes. And then of course we want these pilots to have a sustainable business model. And so finding innovative partnerships and ensure that there's funding for these pilots. And hopefully these initial pilots that we deploy can be replicable in other parts of the region as well. And then of course we want to leverage our major investments and leverage areas where there's existing active transportation and other infrastructure investments in the region. Next slide. So throughout this process, we really wanted to combine qualitative and quantitative data in this analysis. And so as part of that, we've started doing case study research to see where flexible fleet services have been successful or maybe not successful in the past. We've done a lot of outreach with our community-based organizations to ensure that any services we deploy can benefit our underserved communities as well. And then we've been actively coordinating with our transit agencies, cities, and other local stakeholders as well. And we're going to continue that coordination throughout the project. And then as part of the regional plan, we started doing interviews with different flexible fleet providers to see in their perspective, where are flexible fleets the most successful or where they've seen the most success. And so we're building upon that throughout this effort. Next slide. So as I mentioned, we've been working with our community-based organizations to understand more of the qualitative factors that we should be considering when we implement flexible fleet pilots. And so this is not comprehensive at all of the feedback that we heard, but just a few of the reoccurring themes that we heard were to consider the socioeconomic barriers like age and technology, the digital divide, language barriers and banking, and also identify the infrastructure improvements that we need to support some of these pilots. We also, heard that a lot of people don't even know what types of flexible fleet services are out there, what they are and how they can use them. And so why not partner with more of our community-based organizations to help to educate and inform community members. And then we also heard a lot about the different types of locations where people could see themselves taking flexible fleets. So for recreational activities or to go to medical appointments or to connect to existing transit. There's also a strong desire for these flexible fleets to be zero emission. And then we also heard a lot about the services and their operating hours and how they need to be flexible and consider people who work or go to school on off-peak hours. And so those are just a few of the themes that we heard that we'll be integrating into our implementation strategy and considering when we design these different pilots. Next slide. So through the stakeholder engagement and a lot of the feedback that we heard, we identified these broad use cases that you see here on the right. And we determined that there's a need for flexible fleets to enhance access to transit. So there might be pilots where they're connecting to and from transit. There's also a need for flexible fleets to provide multiple connections within a given area. And so that's what we're considering our area-wide service use case. And then something else that we heard is the need for, or the desire for flexible fleets and more flexible transportation options in some of the rural communities in the region, in areas where there's not a lot of transportation options currently. And then last mile delivery is one of the flexible fleets categories. And I think through the engagement process and talking to the community organizations, it's not necessarily one of the most priority use cases, but it is a flexible fleet category. So we are including it in this assessment. And so in addition to the qualitative information that we heard, we also identified a set of different likelihood factors, which is a mix of demographic and socioeconomic travel data. And we essentially took these use cases and I used a different combinations of these likelihood factors to identify geographic locations where there are opportunities for flexible fleet services. So if you go to the next slide, this is an example of the analysis that that's currently under development. We're taking each of these different use cases and, like I mentioned, combining different sets of data, and then also taking in the qualitative data that we heard as well to identify some locations that are suitable for flexible fleet pilots. And so through this analysis, like I mentioned, it's still in progress. So we're going to continue engaging with different stakeholders to refine this analysis, and then also help to prioritize some of these areas. So there's a list of about 11 or 12 different locations at the moment that are high ranking from this data analysis that we conducted. And so now we need to work with our stakeholders to determine how we prioritize these locations, and then refine some of the service boundaries, identify some of the more specific flexible fleet types that could work in those areas, and then some of the implementation considerations, like what are the policies and infrastructure that need to be in place to support these pilots. And so that's where we're at right now with the flexible fleet implementation strategic plan. And I'll hand it over to Marissa, who's going to talk a little bit about our flexible fleet on-call services.
Thanks, Eva. And we like to call it FISP for short, so I'll use that if I reference that for the rest of the presentation, just for my own sanity. I'm Marissa Mangan, a member of the Department of Mobility and Innovation, and while that FISP is underway, we're working in parallel to procure a set of on-call service providers across a lot of the passenger-oriented flexible fleet services, so that we can work with them to design, deploy, and monitor a variety of services throughout the San Diego region on behalf of SANTEC for any pilots that we're personally helping to fund, but also on behalf of our regional stakeholders, such as all of you cities and even our transit agencies. So what we intend to do is leverage this RFP to procure one contractor for each of these 8 flexible fleet service types that you see on the screen. It's every type of fleet that Eva was talking about, except the last mile delivery, because we're keeping this procurement to limiting it to passenger oriented services. And so we have both docked and dockless micromobility, bikes and scooters, in addition to a special category for moped share micromobility, since that's something that was expressed as being of interest both to SANTEC and some of our local cities. Different kinds of microtransit, the type that can hold up to 15 passengers, 12 to 15 passengers, that we've already had some experience piloting in partnership with Carlsbad and NCTD with the Carlsbad Connector, NEVs or neighborhood electric vehicles, smaller lightweight shuttles, ride-hail services, maybe to connect to and from transit, and also car share. So we're thinking about each of these different categories, and we intend to receive a lot of interest from providers out in the industry to submit proposals in each of the categories. There could be a provider that qualifies or offers services in one or more of the categories. And so we're taking that all into account, and we're being very flexible with the amount that they could submit proposals for, but we'll end up evaluating and choosing one per category. So we establish a bench of providers for SANTEC and our local cities to access. And so as far as the RFP scope of work is concerned, in a nutshell, we are dividing it into two pieces. We expect any provider that we do select to be able to assist SANTEC and our stakeholders with both planning and designing a pilot, and then implementing that pilot, and then making sure to fulfill all of the technology specifications, especially data sharing and mobile app development, and everything that goes into implementing that pilot, and making sure to also work with us to evaluate the pilot and do continued performance monitoring. We're setting this up as a joint procurement so that it enables SANTEC and local cities to access that bench over a period of 5 years. SANTEC has an estimated need for on-call flex fleet services in aggregate an amount up to $25 million. So we're building in that capacity for services that either SANTEC and local cities can use. We have just under $5 million of funding to implement our own pilots in the next couple of fiscal years. And we've built in some of that added capacity in the event that our local cities and transit operators want to take advantage of the bench. The great thing about the joint procurement is that it helps to substantially shorten the time frame for initiating those future pilots, because we're doing all of the hard work up front to competitively procure all of these providers by category, combining it into one solicitation. It's going to come in handy, for example, if there's some grant funds that SANTEC issues, maybe the TNC Access for All as one opportunity where we've competitively procured these providers up front, and it allows cities to then take advantage of that bench for their own and eliminate the need for any kind of separate competitive procurement or solicitation process. And we're going to make sure that the contracts that we execute with these providers include language that makes it so that cities are allowed to access the bench. We will be doing continued close coordination with both of our transit agencies and our social equity working group to help inform future pilot opportunities. We're very grateful to cities that participated in an online kind of pulse check survey that we conducted last year on any pilot interests and potential funding that you foresee coming down the pike in the next few years. So that's all helped to inform the scope of work for the RFP, and we expect to release that next week. And this calendar shows the schedule for our RFP in regards to release, proposals being due later in February, taking advantage of March and April of this year for review and provider interviews, and then closing out the fiscal year in order to execute task orders with each of the selected providers. That's our update on flexible fleets. We're happy to answer any questions, and also, of course, touch base one-on-one with any cities that want to get more information both about the FISP and the RFP. And I think I saw Tom's hand go up first, so I'm calling you now that I'm not sharing.
Yeah, good morning, Marissa and Eva. Thank you so much for that presentation. I shared with the group some information in the chat, and I fully support the flexible fleet effort by SANTEC and all of the other agencies we're working with, including NCTD. And just a couple of notes. Yeah, I think this is a great program, and the as needed contract should help our efforts. Just a few comments. One is I dropped a link in there from Dr. Siba for anybody who hasn't watched that video. It's really interesting. And it talks about the technological disruption underway, and really speaks to the issues where, you know, all of our agencies are challenged with declining transit ridership, and how do we address that? So regarding the flexible fleets, I wanted to make a couple of suggestions. One, on a local agency basis, I would suggest that SANTEC consider a line item budget for supporting flexible fleets, similar to what OCTA did with the city of San Clemente, where they had some really low riderships on some of their bus routes. And when they did a 360 review, they were actually recommending terminating, or they did terminate several bus routes in San Clemente. and the city started a beta test program, a rideshare program, and it's super successful. It's actually more successful than the prior bus route. And so I would encourage SANTEC to fund that effort or something similar, and to really move forward with that, because I know we're struggling with the same issue. Secondly, very similar to that, OCTA has a Project V under their program where they fund local trolley, or they call them circulator programs. And I would really consider that as well. In this day and age where people are really concerned about getting into confined spaces like a closed bus, they're much more inclined to get into an open trolley like you see up in Laguna Beach and San Clemente. San Clemente well exceeded their program goals, and it's very successful even during COVID. They've been running it this year during COVID. So that's on a local agency level. And then lastly, as I put in my comments, I would really encourage SANDAG and NCTD to look at flexible fleets for the transit, a commuter transit option. And what we're talking about here is you could do battery electric vehicles, buses, or even smaller vehicles that are in production now that I currently drive. And you could do rideshare programs with 2 or 3 people in those using managed lanes on our highway network. And that is 0 emissions. It's not diesel burning fuel. And it really meets our climate adaptation plans, and could be a very high performing program in a relatively short period of time. So just wanted to share those comments. Again, you guys did a great job with your presentation. I'm in full support of this program. I'm actually pushing SANDAG and NCTD to think a little bit further, kind of push the boundaries and really look at your programs that aren't performing and look at areas that are trending up. So this is one of the areas that's trending up. And of course, we see bike ridership just skyrocketing. So that's going to be another one of my comments at some future point. So thank you for all your efforts, and I yield the floor, Chair.
Thank you, Tom. Appreciate the comments. That's very nice. I see Zubair's hand is up. Zubair, do you have any comments?
Yes, I do have a question, and thank you, Eva and Marissa, about the presentation. Since I am a traffic engineer, my question more oriented toward traffic engineering. So, and you said this is you're going to be doing a pilot project, and if you do, could you consider the impact of these additional fleets on the roadway capacity at locations, wherever you see it's appropriate, just to address it? They may be they may be positive impact, so it's probably good, but it should be addressed in the research. Because, but if you move to, let's say, moped or bike, that may be a positive way of doing it. But if you're adding all these cars that potentially the riders used to walk or some, you're adding more cars into the roadway. So you want to look at that capacity of that specific roadway. How does it impact by these additional fleets? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zubair. Appreciate the information and the comment. Any other comments regarding the subject from any members? Seeing none, great. We're on item number 5. Minji.
Okay, thank you, Mo. Item number 5 is an overview of the Regional Early Action Planning Grant of 2021. That was presented by Allison Wood of SANTEC. Go ahead, please.
Hi, thank you. Good morning. I'm Allison Wood, Senior Planner here at SANDAG. This is just a brief information item for you today. I don't have a presentation. I just wanted to make you aware of the REAP 2.0 program, the Regional Early Action Planning Grants that we are expecting from the state this year. So in the last state budget, the state allocated $600 million to this program, and it's to fund transformational planning and projects to implement regional plans and sustainable community strategies. And a large portion of the funding will be going to regional agencies via formula funds. So SANDAG is expected to receive $43 million in formula funds. And right now, the state has just allowed regional agencies to apply for an initial 10% advance of those funds. So we're preparing an application to do that. And with that initial 10% advance, we'll be coming back to you and to other staffier agencies to really talk about how we want to spend these dollars in our region to implement our regional plan. So just wanted to put this on your radar. We're expecting to conduct a lot of outreach over the next few months. We're expected to kick off some regional initiatives that implement the regional plan, as well as prepare for competitive grant programs similar to our smart growth incentive programs that we've had here at SANTEC for a while. So that's my announcement. I'm happy to answer any questions, but just wanted to get this on your radar and so that you all can expect more information to come over the next few months.
Thank you, Allison. I see Zubir have his hand raised. Zubir, go ahead.
Thank you, Allison. I was wondering in the grant and the plan, if the long-term maintenance of the ITS as part of the regional plan be addressed. What I'm talking about is that, for example, the maintenance of the signals and the signal system, as we take them, if we move them to the next level, it becomes very hard for the local agency to maintain with their staff, and two is the education of their staff. So if in the plan somewhere there is a way of the long-term maintenance of our RTS or the smart roadways that we address, so that way the local agencies has to participate one way or another, then we can look at a plan that is viable for the long term for the region. Thanks.
Yeah, I see Alex came on here. I can say at least for these funds from the state, there's a strong focus on connections with housing and land use and climate commitments, and they're looking for transformational projects to be implemented. So I don't think it's appropriate for this pot of funding, but I'm sure Alex can comment on other ways that we're looking to support that.
Yeah, Subir, so this is more focused on making sure that we carry forward with our housing policy statements and everything that to support the regional plan implementation. But as future funding comes online with the deals with technology, we'll consider that. However, we do have a couple of action items in the regional plan that speaks to that TISMO component, making sure that as we do the strategic implementation, that we also consider ongoing operations and management of those facilities. And obviously our team is focused on making sure that if there's a NOFA released or state funding, but also there's ongoing discussions, right, on how we implement the early action sort of components of the regional plan. So that's being considered, Subir, absolutely.
Good. I don't see any other hands raised. So with that, we'll conclude this item. Thank you, Allison. I'll turn it over to Mo for item number 6.
Thank you. Thank you, Minji. I don't know if you lost Allison, but Allison, if you don't mind, I have a quick question. At some point, would you be able to tell us how that 10%, I think you characterize it as not matching fund, but advance.
Yes.
How are you planning to deal with that? Or is that going to be something that SANTEC is going to internally handle it?
Yeah, we are planning to internally apply. We have to meet some certain criteria from the state on how we expect to spend that initial 10%. But the intent from the state is to give us this money to then embark on all the planning that we need to do to develop the rest of the program to spend the remaining, almost 40 million. So we're expecting to do a significant amount of outreach and engagement with those funds. And then some of the early actions from the regional plan that Alex mentioned. So we're still fleshing that out, but that's the plan for that initial 10%.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the explanation. I appreciate it. All right. We are on item number 6, which is the ongoing discussion of the CTAC and SANTEC's future. Last time when we discussed this item, the group almost unanimously showed interest in the work plan, and being a responsive group, we decided to put that on the agenda. So Cecily Taylor is going to provide us an update on this one. But Alex, is there anything that you want to introduce before Cecily gets us started?
No, I'll turn it over to Cecily. All it is just a follow-up based on, like you said, Mo, previous discussions. But Cecily's going to really get into kind of the next steps and really flushing out the work plan that we previously presented and make sure that we attain input from all of you. And that's the essence. In terms of kind of the next step, high level, as Cecily brings this forward, the idea here is that the new working group structure will take in effect. We still have to go through our SANDAG executive board membership to get approval. But the way we're doing that, as you recall, and we kind of made that announcement during the last time, is that we're doing this agency-wide. So the actual working group will not be effective, probably likely till the end or the beginning of the next fiscal year. So we're getting ready to kind of carry that forward. And this is one of the ongoing discussions that we wanted to bring back to all of you.
Thank you. Appreciate the information. Cecily, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so as Alex said, looking to go into effect sometime in the summer with the new fiscal year. We are considering the charter pretty much final at this point. You saw that last month, and we followed up and got some feedback from you all. So thank you for those who provided your feedback. And for today's discussion, wanted to dive a little bit deeper into the work plan. So we've put this together. I'm sharing my screen now, and you'll see that there's just a couple of red lines of changes from what we shared last month. And this work plan was put together based on the projects identified in our regional plan and other critical focus areas that we know are important to this group. But want to get your thoughts on the subject areas in general. I'll point out that this is a living document, so this is certainly something that can be revisited. And it's only meant to really encompass 1 year of topics. So there's probably a lot here, a lot to get through, but just want to start the discussion here. So I'll run through, not going into every single bullet point, but just high level. We have identified some of the next OS projects that are either continuing from initial planning into system requirements, or some projects that need that initial concept of operations planning done, such as for managed lanes, which we've talked about a bit earlier today. We also have TISMO activities here where we are coordinating with all of you on implementing actions related to the TISMO plan. We have supporting the local streets and roads program, both the reporting and implementing the audit recommendations that's ongoing. Some clean transportation plans and programs with a few specific projects called out. The regional digital equity strategy and action plan. And this is something that we'll hear a little bit more later on today, some of the updates on that. But again, a few specific projects that we know are kind of up next related to digital communications and broadband. The flexible fleet pilot project planning that we just got an update on. We have a bullet also for having educational and peer exchange forums. So this is one where I added, based on discussions last month, that there's this interest in AB 43 and setting speed limits. So that's one that we are already starting to plan and put together. We'll hear more next month. There are some specific active transportation projects, whether they're really focused on active transportation or coordinating along with multimodal corridor planning. And lastly, want to leave room to discuss any grant application opportunities, as well as if there's changes to state or federal bills that would affect our regional plan implementation or planning, that will certainly be addressed by this new working group as well. So I realize that was pretty quick overview, but want to open it up to see if there's anything we've missed, if there's anything you want to ask about. Julie, I see a hand from you.
Yes, good morning, Cecily. Thank you so much for your presentation and for the information. I apologize, I have to leave at 10 a.m. for another meeting, so I wanted to jump in here really quickly and just ask that we consider adding to the work plan implementation of the regional transportation plan and review of the early action projects that are proposed, either as a part of an extension of the Transnet ordinance or just as a part of, using existing Transnet funds. So I'd like to recommend that be included in our work plan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Cecily, I have a question. When we had the old-fashioned CTAC team, every once in a while we did a joint meeting with the TWIG group. I found them very beneficial, just learning about some of the stuff that was on their agenda. And as some of you may agree, the two working group pretty much work together on many transportation planning issues. So, I mean, if time allows, I wouldn't mind having maybe a joint meeting with them as well, if it's possible.
Yeah, I would think that depending on the subject matter, that there's definitely alignment with that group. And that group will similarly be affected by this restructure, but in kind of a similar vein of wanting to align with the regional plan and the committees, the policy advisory committees we have.
Oh, good. Thank you. Any other comments? Maybe I put Tom Frank on spot because I know, Tom, you had some concern about some of the items that we discussed before. Is there anything you like to see in our work plan? All right, I guess we're good on this one. Thank you very much, Cecilia. I really appreciate the update. That was very helpful.
And real quick, Cecily, are we going to give members one last chance to send this out? Maybe give them one more last week to give us some additional comments. Again, there's flexibility to this, as Cecily alluded to. So this is going to be an annual. So we will revisit this work plan on an annual basis.
Yeah, I think we can definitely share it out. And if you have thoughts following today's meeting, please let us know.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Minji, you're on.
Thank you, Mo. Okay, now item number 7 is an overview of the transportation performance management to be presented by Grace Minio of SANTEC. I hope I got your name right. Go ahead, please.
Hi, good morning, SANTEC and CTAC members. I presented our transportation performance management framework last month in your December meeting. I'm just coming back to open the discussion. I'm just going to do a quick review really quickly for members who weren't able to attend December's meeting. And then we want to open up the discussion to everyone here to see what is being collected in your jurisdictions now, because we don't want to reinvent the wheel and we want to partner together. So let me begin the quick presentation. Just quick, okay, I'm transferring. Okay, just making sure. So just a quick overview of the presentation this morning. We're just going to do a quick background. Again, I presented this to you all back in December. Just go over the TPM framework really quickly, the implementation recommendations that was given to us by our consultant, Kimberly Horn, who had conducted the study for us, and then we'll open up the discussion to everyone in all the panel members. And so again, this stems from the fiscal year 2018 Transnet Triennial Performance Audit Recommendation, and it was to establish a performance framework. SANTEC, the auditors had wanted us to do this to set performance targets, capture outcome data, and conduct robust cause and effect analysis. We want to align our reports with Transnet goals. We want to consider additional resources, examine third-party data, and improve our existing tools. Again, there was a total list of 40 recommendations, and there was a relevance on performance indicators with about 28 recommendations. And so again, just the overall TPM goals, we want to do this so that we're addressing the audit recommendations. We want to improve our performance monitoring efforts across the agency. We want to, again, strengthen to be a data-driven organization. And then we also want to be a technology-forward organization, both internally and externally. And again, this is just to demonstrate transparency and clarity, to be good stewards of taxpayer money, and to show what people are getting with what we're investing the money in all your jurisdictions. Again, the TPM recommendations, they wanted us to have more updated reporting requirements for congestion and mobility on arterial roads, safety and trends, pavement reporting, and vehicle miles traveled. And so why are we here today, or why am I back here today after presenting to you last week, is that we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We know you all are already collecting certain data points in your own jurisdictions. We want to figure out what that data is already that's being collected. We're trying to get a lay of the land and get a deeper understanding of the type of data you already are collecting, and we want to bridge any gaps to give credit for the work that's already been completed. And then this is just our discovery effort, given both the audit recommendations, and the board will be looking into Transnet ordinance amendments for SANTEC to implement this. And so we want to report outcomes on efforts that reduce congestion and improve travel times. And just as a heads up to the CTAC SANTEC members, we have created a survey that we would like to distribute to all of your jurisdictions. And again, it might not just be one person that's on CTAC SANTEC. There might be multiple people in your jurisdiction, as we are trying to collect the information that you already report on. But then also for those who receive grants, we teamed up with our grants management and our contracts department. And so it's a joint survey effort from both SANTEC's grants management area and plus the performance monitoring area. And so this is where we just want to talk with you all and figure out what is the kind of data that's being collected, and how do we just, we as SANTEC staff are already doing a lot of work in the background. We're looking into a system that we would push out to the jurisdictions to help with the reporting, and so that it would be all in one system, and that you wouldn't be doing different areas of reporting, like sending different Excel sheets and sending it to different staff. We're looking right now at several systems. We are doing research in the background to look at big data. That isn't completed yet, but it's in the works. As an organization, one of the bigger efforts that we've already done is to consolidate performance monitoring efforts under one division, and that's even though it's being done across the agency and several divisions, we're trying to house performance monitoring under our research and program management area. And so that's already happened with our bigger efforts, and we're also doing that with our budgeting process. And so again, we've taken the audit recommendations, and we're implementing all these strategies to ensure that we can show the outcomes of what's being done across the region with taxpayer money, and how that's benefiting both the jurisdictions and the taxpayers of San Diego. And so, Alex, you want to add to this?
Yeah, so I just want to really expand on what Grace is alluding to. So this is probably first of a series of check-ins or discussion points. So today's the first one specifically with how we would carry over or implement this performance reporting as a result of the audit recommendation. So there is going to be a survey, as Grace alluded to. So when you have a chance, when you get that survey, recognizing that it might go to several of your staff members, make sure that you take the time to answer that. The only thing that more substantive to add to Grace is that if you recall, and for those that have been part of the CTAC over the last 5 years, we carried out something similar to this in nature, where at that time we were, if you recall, I think we gathered some information on all of you, how you're collecting and reporting on your payment conditions, the type of mobility data at that time. So we have some baseline information, but I think it's been some time. So we just want to kind of go back and re-baseline everything, and also kind of go through the discovery effort. So then as we proceed forward, as Grace alluded to, we do not want to reinvent the wheel, but we also want to come in with saying, hey, these are the existing processes and tools that everybody is using now. So then it'll give us some idea on how we close the gap to make sure that as we proceed with implementing and executing this new performance reporting requirement, that we have enough information to then determine possible solutions, possible resource needs. So this is the first time, and I'm assuming, and I haven't talked to Grace, but this is probably going to be one of several meetings there. She's going to be coming back. Even just based on the survey findings, that hopefully when you guys respond, we'll come back and report on that. Did we want to have Jenny then speak to the survey on the,
Sure, is she here?
Yes.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I'm here.
Hi,
Hi,
Jenny.
everyone. So my name is Jenny Russo. I'm the grants program manager here at SANDAG. And I think one of the connections I wanted to make is because this is coming out of the Transnet from ITALK, and the board is really interested in performance measures. One of the things that you're going to see is all of our grant programs will have performance measures put into them. So the 3 programs that are out right now, our EMP, our Smart Growth, and our Housing Incentive Program, all have performance measures discussed. So this is our first step, is putting some in place, seeing what kind of data is out there and where things go. So this will be a continuation and an involvement process that's going to keep changing, but we're looking to try and streamline, because we know many of you get grant programs from us. You also get local street and road funding, so we're trying not to duplicate resources, because a lot of the data may be very, very similar that we're collecting. So that's why we're working with Grace's team, making sure that we're not, asking too much of all of you, and trying to make this as easy as possible to collect the information and be able to report out on the success of our programs. I'll give it back to you, Grace.
That was the end of my presentation, but I just didn't know if there was any discussion or questions from the panel members that we can help answer.
Chair, I don't see any hands raised unless, oh, here we go. Maureen from City San Diego.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I just wanted to say that the city is also working on an effort of kind of coming up with comprehensive performance measures, and so would be very interested in kind of looking at the survey and examining that in conjunction with SANDAG's effort.
Yeah, we're at the survey, we've drafted it. It should be being sent out sometime next week, late next week.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Chair, I don't see any other hands raised or any cameras being turned on.
Great, thank you very much. I think we're up on item number 8, correct? So item number 8 is a regional digital equity strategy and action plan, and Crystal Ayala is going to make a presentation. Crystal, please.
Hi, thank you, Chair, and good morning, CTAC and SANTEC members. While we pull up the presentation, for those of you who don't know me, Crystal Ayala, I'm a partnership strategist with the Mobility and Innovation Department. And today I'm going to share an update of a really exciting effort that we've been working on over the past few years, and that's the development of our regional digital equity strategy and action plan. And as you'll hear me talk about today, the infrastructure that enables broadband, but also enables many of the transportation investments that some of you have talked about today, is really critical. So we've embarked on a few early actions as part of this strategy and action plan, and we want to talk to you about engaging with all of you in helping us to implement and advance many of the actions that we've identified. So next slide, please. I think for many of you, right, it's no surprise why digital equity and ensuring that everyone has access to broadband is really important. I mean, it's especially in today's day and age and with the pandemic, we've really relied on this technology to access work, education, telehealth, online, government services. But the pandemic really shined a light on the communities that were affected most by the digital divide, and those who lacked access to internet and a device were literally cut off from education, from work, from health opportunities. And what we've learned is that many of these communities are impacted most by the digital divide are the same communities that have had the highest unemployment rates and were hit hardest by the pandemic. So, SANTEC's involvement in this space and in terms of quality of life and advancing equity and economic opportunities is really important. In addition to the importance of digital equity for quality of life and sustainability and equity, it's also a really important part of transportation. Today, we simply can't just monitor the transportation system without it. We wouldn't have access to trip planning tools, real-time travel information, understanding congestion delays, hailing a ride-hail vehicle or bike share just wouldn't be possible without access to technology and high-quality broadband. And in the future, we're going to rely on this even more, right? Autonomous and connected vehicles won't work without this technology. So it's really no longer a nice to have as part of transportation projects, but it's a really critical component of projects moving forward. And so as a metropolitan planning organization and transportation planning agency, SANDAG and you as locals, we really have an important role to play in building out this infrastructure and helping to advance not only digital equity initiatives, but also, what this might mean for the future of transportation. So if the nexus to transportation wasn't clear enough, I think this diagram really helps to kind of connect these two pieces. I'm going to be talking about infrastructure a little bit later in the presentation, so I just want to quickly step through how broadband infrastructure is laid out so we all have a common understanding. So first we have a fiber optic backbone, and like transportation, you can think of this as a major interstate or an Amtrak rail service that crosses the country, covers the nation. Then we have the middle mile fiber network, which connects to that backbone and then connects that to the internet service provider's distribution hub. So you can think of this like our state routes, Low-Sand Corridor, the Orange Line, and then there's that last mile connection that takes the middle mile connection to your home or your business. And that doesn't have to be fiber. It can be provided through a variety of means like cable or satellite or wireless, just like last mile connections to transit. You can park and ride, you can ride your bike to the transit station. So in recent months and over the past year, there's been a lot of momentum at the state and federal level. Our involvement in this space started a little bit over a year ago, and that was really as a result of action that the governor took in August of 2019 when he issued Executive Order 7320. And that did a few things, but primarily directed state agencies to take specific actions to expand high-speed broadband statewide and to develop a state action plan. And that action plan identified a variety of agencies that have a key role in expanding broadband. Caltrans is one of the ones that are named, as well as a few other organizations like OPR, for example. The executive order also increased the threshold of broadband from 25 megabits down and 3 megabits upload speeds to 120. So that's providing a higher performance threshold for broadband. There's also been a few key pieces of legislation over the past year that were signed last summer, which in short really increased a lot of the funding that's available for digital equity programming and also expansion of this broadband infrastructure. Notably, I just want to highlight Senate Bill 156. That was a historic broadband budget trailer bill that invests $6 billion over the next 3 years to do a few things. One is to provide funding to deploy last mile connections. So that's the one from the middle mile to your home, financing broadband projects. And the biggest chunk of this funding is going to be used to develop a statewide open access middle mile network. So this network will be deployed over the next few years in partnership with Caltrans and a few other stakeholders, and will allow various internet service providers to connect to this middle mile network and expand access to broadband throughout the state. So in response to all of this state action, we also took action regionally in our region. Last January, we asked the Board of Directors to adopt a resolution committing to close the digital divide and develop a strategy for doing so. We formed a digital divide task force that many staff from your agencies participate on. The task force consists of both public and private stakeholders, and they were really key in helping to develop a regional digital equity strategy, which was just adopted by the Board of Directors this last December. Now, in addition to the task force, we've also been working with a coalition of leaders across Southern California. Much like transportation, the digital divide doesn't end at county lines, and it's really important to have a coordinated approach to how we are approaching digital equity policy and planning. So we've been working really closely with other leaders, organizations, and SCAG to advance many of these efforts in a coordinated fashion. So we spent, many months when we kicked off this effort conducting a broadband gap analysis to really understand where the disparities in the region exist, where there are gaps in infrastructure and where there are gaps in service. Not much different than, the mobility landscape, data collection is really important part of this. And unfortunately, there's really a lack of accurate and reliable data on broadband. It's not something that is easy to acquire, but we were able to develop a really comprehensive look at the digital divide in the region. And so this slide here shows a snapshot of some of the key issues that we uncovered. In short, the digital divide really impacts our urban and our rural communities differently. Our rural and tribes areas don't have fixed broadband. And then even in areas where there is service, adoption is very low, especially among households earning less than $50,000 per year. Seniors, Black, Hispanic, and American Indian households are also less likely to have a computer and internet at home. And one of the biggest barriers to connectivity is, to no surprise, the cost of service. Affordability is a huge barrier to adoption. And then, like many of us can attest to, right, even those who have access to internet have experienced many performance issues that make it really hard for us to do our jobs, connect to school. So, the service that many of us are getting isn't necessarily adequate enough to be able to participate in today's digital world. So in the next slide, you'll see the number of providers in the region, and that really helps to put the affordability kind of question in much clearer focus. It's really no surprise that cost is high when there's not much competition, right? So most of the region is served by 1-2 providers, and you can see that options in the rural and the tribal areas are just incredibly limited. The less choice of providers, that lack of option of providers, also translate to limited access and service. So this map shows the census blocks in our region that have access to fixed broadband service that provides broadband at a threshold of 25 3 megabits per second. So that's that federal threshold of what broadband is. This data comes directly from internet service providers. One thing that I do want to highlight is that with this data set, if simply one household in a census block is served by an internet service provider, that entire census block is deemed as served. So you can imagine that that leads to quite a bit of overestimating, over-reporting broadband access. But despite this, you can still see very clearly in this map that many households in the rural and the tribal areas have limited or just absolutely no access at all. All right, so I'm going to pivot now towards the infrastructure part of the equation. As I mentioned earlier, fiber is a really big part of the puzzle here. It provides much of the underlying infrastructure that provides internet to our homes and to our businesses. And to no surprise, data on location of where privately owned fiber is located is not publicly available. It's proprietary information. But with the assistance from the California Public Utilities Commission, which regulates broadband providers, and Caltrans, we were really fortunate to be able to identify, at minimum, the census blocks where private fiber is present. So that's what you're seeing here in dark blue. Now, that doesn't imply that the fiber is being used to provide internet service or that service quality is good by any means, but it does help to identify areas where there are really clear gaps in that backbone and that middle mile network. Biggest gaps obviously exist in the rural areas, but there are some really clear holes in the urban parts of the county as well. And as you click through, you'll see here, we've added a layer on publicly owned fiber. So in addition to fiber that's managed by private companies, many government agencies like yours have invested in fiber to connect public facilities. So that map, if we could go back to that slide, thank you, shows where our transportation agencies, so that's SANTEC, Caltrans, MTS, and NCTD, have developed a fiber ring. So that fiber ring today is currently being used to provide resiliency and redundancy for transportation purposes. But public fiber like this one can actually be better utilized in the urban areas to increase service options, bring more providers to the table, and in turn help to lower cost of service. And in the rural areas, one of the ways that we can expand this infrastructure and make better use of infrastructure is by using a dig once approach. And so what you've seen pop up here on the slide is a snapshot of the State Route 67, and it's highlighted there in lime green. And we've already started to utilize this dig once approach in partnership with the County of San Diego and Caltrans to fill a gap along one of our rural corridors. So we partnered to add conduit and fiber to a project that was already planned and slated to go to construction by Caltrans. And this really kind of serves as a model of how we think as a region we can help expand this infrastructure and help enable both transportation technology improvements and enable the expansion of broadband in the region. So this next slide here shows a snapshot of the strategies that we've put forward in our regional digital equity strategy. It is incredibly comprehensive and tackles both sides of the equation. I've talked a lot about broadband access and infrastructure, but the strategy also tackles the adoption question. So building the partnerships to ensure that households are receiving adequate and affordable service, that people have the tools and the skills needed to be able to benefit from access to internet. And I won't go into too much detail, but really we want to emphasize that there needs to be a stronger consensus that broadband really is an essential public service. And that means that we as public agencies need to be planning for it, building out the infrastructure, especially in areas where that doesn't exist, and establishing the partnerships to ensure that this investment is really reaching every household, and advocating for more resources for digital equity. So now, in addition to the strategy, we've also developed a comprehensive action plan that sort of lays out near-term and continuing actions that SANTEC, our Digital Divide Task Force, and many other partners like our local partners will need to work together to advance. A few of the actions that we're working on to expand broadband access are on this slide here. You can take a look at our action plan to see the various other actions that we've put forward to expand many of the other strategies you saw in the slide previously. I'm not going to highlight all of them in detail, but I do want to talk about a few of the key actions we're working on to expand the infrastructure that will enable broadband. This next slide here speaks to a work group that we're hoping to put together to tackle a lot of the issues around permitting and practices to really expedite the deployment of digital infrastructure in underserved areas. Stakeholder and partnership building is going to be a really critical part of implementing the strategy and the action plan. And so we really want to convene this work group of local jurisdiction staff to collectively and proactively plan for this digital infrastructure. And so as part of this work group, we're hoping to leverage everyone's expertise and knowledge to develop a regional approach for, policies and templates for things like regional fiber sharing agreements, developing a standard mastered encroachment permit process. We'd also like to inventory all of the public digital infrastructure and then develop a master plan to build out a resilient public fiber ring that can connect all of the jurisdictions, in turn support the transportation network and use that fiber ring to provide affordable internet in public locations like city halls, community centers, and libraries. So that's just a snapshot of the work that this work group will be asked to support. This work group is also going to help us to develop a dig once policy to ensure that this infrastructure is embedded in all future SANTEC funded projects and plans. So that also includes Transnet funded projects such as local streets and roads. Inclusion of this dig once policy was included as part of the overall package of potential upcoming amendments to the Transnet extension ordinance that was actually brought to ITAC in November. And we were just presenting to ITAC last week again on an update of this dig once policy and what this may mean for future Transnet projects. So I just want to really quickly touch on some of the benefits. There's been a lot of state and federal activities that have really underscored the need for developing a dig once policy. And on this next slide, you'll see a snapshot of both state and federal directives to do just that and to make better use of public infrastructure. Caltrans has been doing this for a few years now with AB 1549. They were directed to install broadband conduit along state highway projects and coordinate with broadband providers to best leverage that infrastructure. And then most recently, actually last month, the Federal Highway Administration published a new rule also facilitating the installation of broadband within state transportation projects. So a lot of momentum from many different agencies kind of directing this. And so locally, we really have the opportunity to align with what's happening at the state and federal level. And, there's many benefits to developing a dig once policy. We've heard from many cities as part of our task force that there's a lot of interest in adopting a dig once policy that will really help to formalize proactive planning and deployment of this infrastructure, help realize cost efficiencies, and ultimately also preserve, the state of the roadways and public infrastructure. Some cities already have similar kind of approaches, like a street moratorium, for example, to not excavate on a street. So this developing a regional dig once policy really helps to kind of formalize what this looks like for the region. And by bundling this infrastructure with public works projects, it's really beneficial to us as public agencies because we're able to better allocate public funds, reduce the risk of, spending taxpayer dollars to retrench or to re-excavate areas where, maybe a little more thoughtful coordination with broadband providers could have mitigated this. And the scale of what this policy actually looks like once implemented will vary based on project scopes. But we have done some research on best practices and have found that many cities that have implemented this policy have been able to realize significant cost and time savings, sometimes up to 90%. And that's because you're able to save resources on things like traffic control, permitting, for example. And just as a point of reference on the State Route 67 that I mentioned earlier, by bundling the conduit and the fiber with the pavement rehab project, we were able to save over $5 million. So kind of an example of how the dig once policy can really be beneficial to public agencies. And so in terms of next steps, we are going to be fleshing out what this dig once policy and the associated Transnet amendments look like over the next few months. We will be returning to both you and ITAC in the coming months with those proposed amendments and that draft dig once policy. And then we're going to be kicking off our digital infrastructure work group next month as well. So we're still working through the membership of that work group. Attached to the staff report as part of attachment 2 is a draft charter of the work group, and what we intend the work group will be working on over the next few months. But if you have identified staff who'd like to be part of that work group, please send your staff recommendations to Jackie Tovar. Email is here on the presentation so that we can start building a catalog of the appropriate staff who should be involved in this work group. So that concludes my presentation. I know this was a lot of information. On this next slide here, you'll just see a link to where you can find more information on our digital equity strategy and action plan, as well as where you can find more information on all of the data that we've evaluated through this process. We put together a really helpful story map, so that helps provide a little bit more detail on some of the data that I shared a little bit earlier.
Thank you, Crystal. I have a quick question for you. Is this DIG 1 policy specific to fiber optic installation, or is it related to just about any utilities that potentially could dig the street?
The DIG 1's policy, we're being a little intentional and not calling out specifically conduit and fiber. That is typically what we're talking about today, but that may change in the future, right? So we're trying to develop a policy that is a little bit flexible and future forward thinking. But yeah, that's it. The DIG 1's policies that we've seen implemented by many cities throughout the state and outside of the state are really around conduit, installation of fiber, and then coordination with other utilities who may want to leverage that trench to install their own assets as well.
Very good, thank you. Are there any questions for Crystal? Zubair.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you, Mo. I think I'll ask you the same question. I can see the gaps are a lot in the county of San Diego. And so it goes back to the long-term maintenance of this facility. I didn't hear anything that there is a joint power authority that will be funded separately, it will be maintaining these facilities, or is this just another improvement that will be given to the county and potentially under traffic engineering that we have to maintain in addition to what we do? Can you talk to that?
Yeah, no, you're right on the nose, Zubair. And so as part of what we also want this work group to do, help us with, is this master planning effort that we plan to hire a consultant for. So we're in the process of scoping that effort now. And this master plan would really help to do a few things. One, assist with inventory of where that digital infrastructure is today and what gaps are there and how we can fill those gaps to connect all of our cities, provide better connections to our cities, and maybe use that to provide affordable internet to residents for free, for example. So there's a few models of what's been done in other parts of the region. And part of that master planning effort will be recommendations, governance structures, how can we operate and maintain this in the long term, and what are some recommendations for us as a region and as locals that we can pursue.
And just another comment. I mean, in my mind, at least, I mean, I've been around for a while. We could use the example of the call boxes that we used to have, and it could, create an agency that maintains this, because it's basically in the past the call boxes, and I don't know if they're gone or not. I mean, nobody uses them now, but it's the same principle. Is that there is a facility that the society or the community needs, but it's very specialized that we need somebody to maintain them. So in my mind, you could follow the call boxes, structures for the future maintenance, and you allocate money on a regular to them and whatever it is, or maybe paid by the users, some of it. I know you're trying to provide the people that can't afford a lot of it, but you have a lot of other programs that you could subsidize and all that stuff. But at least for us in traffic engineering, we say, okay, well, I mean, I don't know anything about, not fiber, but communication in this way. I'm in traffic engineering. I'm in moving cars and people and users. So it makes more sense to do something like that if possible. Thank you.
You're speaking to my heart, Zabir. I used to work on the call box program, so
Oh,
I
see?
love that shout out. Yeah.
See?
Thank you, Zubair, and thank you, Crystal. I appreciate the update. That's very informative.
Real quick,
Everyone-
Crystal, just to close this item up. So Crystal alluded to getting some participants in this working group, or work group. So Crystal, we are going to share the presentation and the information that Crystal alluded to the action plan. It's actually part of the packet. So when we follow up with all members with Crystal's emails, if you are interested, please reply to Crystal.
Yeah, and we're going to be going to TWIG as well. I think we envision this work group being a combination of, a few different staff, but the intent of this is to really be a key part in developing those regional permitting practices and standards. So we really want to make sure we have the right folks in the room. So please send over any recommendations of staff that you think should participate in this.
Thank you, will do. Okay, Minji, item number
Thank
9.
you. Next item is an update from Caltrans. We have Rob Owen with us. Rob, go ahead, please.
Good morning. First of all, I'm Rob Owen with District 11 Local Assistance. And if you haven't heard already, our District Local Assistance Engineer, Bing Liu, who has already been on rotation at Caltrans headquarters for the past almost 2 years, he's accepted a permanent transfer to a position there. I think it's in actually, I need to double check which function it is, but it's still a remote working position, but it's a specialist position there in headquarters. And so the announcement for backfilling his position in the district has been advertised. So hopefully soon we'll know who the permanent replacement will be. Just a couple of highlights also from the report in the agenda package. I actually have up here on the screen right now the next federal aid series, which is next week. So if you have any new people or people want to focus specifically on the project development part of that series, the information is there on your screen, and I can, well, the links are actually the same registration link that should be in your training link in the agenda package. Just going through a couple of other highlights in the written announcements. Everybody's been doing really well again with their inactive projects. There's just kind of a few remaining out there, and the announcement has come out that on February 7th, if there still isn't an invoice for the few inactive projects, they will need to receive a justification for not receiving those invoices. Again, it's just applies to a few projects at this point. The second deadline coming up at the end of the month, the request for authorization for any federal aid projects will be due on January 31st for this year. And so, yep, please keep working with us to meet that deadline and make sure we get everything obligated timely for this year. Just because even with all the new federal funding, the funds are still depleting very quickly. Another big deadline, February 1st, for anybody who's been working on a Clean California project. Still got a couple weeks to get the applications together. They just had a final workshop last week, and all of them are recorded and online through the link there in your notes. again, let any of us know or your area engineer know if you have any questions about that process. It should be fairly quick review process, and we're supposed to have announcements on the winners by March 1st. An active transportation deadline hasn't been announced, but it's still anticipated to come up this year. There's a list of all the workshops that the California Transportation Commission is having. Again, those are being recorded, listed online, and they're even offering, to have virtual workshops or consultations with CTC staff. Again, that contact information there is in your notes. Any projects that have to be approved by the California Transportation Commission, the schedule is in there as always. And again, requesting, a couple of months before the meeting that you want to have the allocation request done. And just finally, I'll note, every year headquarters updates the local assistance program guidelines and local assistance procedures manual, which incorporate a lot of the office bulletins that come out throughout the year. So there's a link there in your notes to those updated documents. And I think that's pretty much all it as far as the new information. I don't know if I mentioned, I think under the request for authorization, there is a new form that just came out, the Exhibit 3A, just came out earlier this month, a newer, interactive form. I included that link there in the notes so that you're making sure you use the current form. Hopefully it's fixed any kind of glitches in some of the drop-down menus and such. That, they're always trying to improve that process to make it more streamlined electronically. So unless there are any further questions, I will leave it there.
Thank you, Rob. Any questions for Rob? I don't see no hand raised. With that, I'll turn it over to Mo.
Thank you, Minji, and thank you, Rob, for the update. Appreciate it. We are at the end of our meeting. Since we are a little bit ahead of the schedule, is there any items that anybody wants to talk about? Any comments, announcements?
Chair, I see a hand raised from Subir. I don't know if that was your previously hand raised, Subir, or is this a new one?
That's
No, it's a leftover.
Okay. You only have two hands.
I know.
With that, I don't see any other hands raised or anybody bringing up their camera, Chair.
Very good.
If they want to speak.
Well, thank you very much, Alex. I just want to express my appreciation, especially to Tim, who's basically masterminding all of these arrangements under Alex's leadership. So thank you very much, everyone from SANTEC team to put together this meeting. Our next meeting is on February 17 at 9 a.m. as usual. Have a wonderful day. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.